Mr. Sanis, on June 16, 1972, the night of the famous Watergate wiretapping and burglary incident, were you already scheduled to testify before a federal grand jury in Seattle, Washington?
Yes. On the night of the Watergate burglary, I was scheduled 4 days later, on the 20th of June, 1972, to testify before a federal grand jury that I had forced the convening of by very unusual means, and which I write about, and you can find at www.darkmattermotor.com or under FBI Dirty Wars on the internet. And the reason that the Watergate break-in occurred was directly because of my testimony scheduled before a federal grand jury that I'd forced the convening of, that I gave 4 days later on June 20th, 1972. I voluntarily testified without grant of immunity to criminal acts, including criminal conspiracies of a wide variety, of burglary, of conspiracy to commit first-degree bombing, obstruction of justice charges of all kinds, that if I were convicted of each and every one of those accounts of criminal violation, I would have had an aggregate of well over 800 years in a federal penitentiary if they just added the minimum terms for each of those counts that I testified to having committed. The reason that I did those crimes was because I had infiltrated the Federal Bureau of Investigation after I had found and did an investigation of and determined that a bombing in the United States Post Office at 43rd and University Way in Seattle on March 3rd, 1970, had been carried out at the direction of FBI Special Agent Lewis M. Harris, Jr. of the Seattle office of the FBI. And I knew that Lewis M. Harris, Jr. was not working alone, because by surveilling him shortly after that burglary, I knew that his partner was the deputy in charge of the Federal Bureau of Investigation Seattle office under the leadership of J. Earl Mills, and that was Bert Carter, who was the ASAC, Assistant Special Agent in charge of the FBI Seattle office, and the partner of Lewis M. Harris, Jr. By surveillance of both of them that I conducted, I knew they had been involved in not only the bombing of the United States Post Office on University Way at 43rd on the night of March 3rd, 1970, but I also knew that they had been involved in the bombing earlier on the 28th of February, 1970, of the construction site of the University of Washington Architecture Building at the University of Washington in Seattle, just 3 blocks away. That, if I remember correctly from many years ago, was on 40th at University Way, between University Way and Brooklyn. I also knew that this pair then was involved in a bombing of the University of Washington Administration Building in 1969. My great concern was that in the bombing at the University of Washington Administrative Building, or Administration Building more correctly, in 1970, that a policeman in his car was jarred and certainly traumatized when his car moved sideways literally moved sideways as he was sitting in it by the violence of the dynamite blast at the University of Washington Administration Building. I also knew that at the University of Washington's architecture construction site, that building had been subjected to, on the 28th of February 1970, 2 bombings. One worked. The second bomb, a much larger bomb, was hidden in a stack of lumber by a man named Jeffrey Paul Desmond, who built the bombs for that, who also built the bomb that led to the murder of a man named Larry Ward at another bomb site later. But I also knew that these 2 FBI agents were conspirators in all of these bombings except the one that hadn't happened, that of Larry Ward. So I knew that I was dealing with elements of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, their sworn agents, special agents of the FBI, including the Assistant Special Agent in charge of the FBI, Bert Carter. I was dealing with people who had planned and executed bombings, and most heinously to me, the second bomb that was set did not go off in the University of Washington's architecture building construction site, was meant to kill, maim, damage responding Seattle police department officials and Seattle Fire Department officials when they responded to that first blast. And as I have talked about and written about at length, on the night of March 4th, 1970, while I was having a late breakfast from an almost 24-hour construction effort to finish the completion of a very large nightclub, also a few blocks away from the bombing site at the post office. It was on (47th) at about 3 blocks from University Way, and on Old Highway 99, and that if people were doing all of these bombings and they were FBI agents, then I should do something about it, because I am a bombing expert and have been, and was a bomb expert for the Federal Bureau of Investigation after that, and before that for the National Security Agency in 3 tours of combat in Vietnam.